Good afternoon, everyone. Today, on behalf of Cleanliness Committee, I welcome you all. As you all know, today we are having a webinar on wetlands, role of wetlands for the conservation of environment. So we are honored. We have with us Dr. Pamposh. She is assistant professor in University School of Environment Management, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, Delhi, and uh, our cleanliness committee is joint attached with the students all throughout the year. We used to conduct a lot of activities. We used to conduct webinar for them. And today we have Dr. Pamposh with us. She is from University School of Environmental Management, and she has been working with wetlands for more than 15 years. Since 2005, she is working on that. She has been awarded Best Thesis Award in the year 2006, and she has also worked with Wetland International South Asia, and she also has an experience of working in Niti Aayog. Previously, it was Planning Commission for more than 2 years. Since 2005, she is working on that. She has been awarded Best Thesis Award in the year 2006. She has more than 12 years of research experience. South Asia, and she also has an experience of work. Uh, She has more than 12 years of research and teaching experience, and today we are honored to have with us Dr. Pamposh. So, without taking much of time, I welcome you all. I welcome Dr. Kamlesh, ma'am. She is the convener of our society, convener of our committee. I also welcome Anita, ma'am, the co-convener of our committee, and I also welcome all my teachers, all my senior teachers, all my friends, and moreover, the students who are there all throughout the year attached to this committee, doing all the kind of activity for us. I welcome you all. So I now hand over mic to Dr. Pamposh.
Well,
Ma'am, please.
first of all, good afternoon to everyone, and I'm really thankful to the organizing committee, especially Dr. Sonal Bhatnagar, to invite me for delivering a talk on a very important ecosystem that's wetlands and how instrumental they are for environmental cleanup. Really thankful to I just would like first to share my presentation. So let me share my screen with all of you. Let me know, is this visible to all of you?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is visible. It is visible.
Okay, thank you, Sonal. Um, before I start my talk on wetlands and how they are very important for treating this wastewater applicable, and that has been the technology which is now we working on. Wetlands, as you all know, they have very important ecosystems and on the earth, and they have been described as the kidney of landscape. By the word kidney of landscape, you can understand as in human body how important the kidney is, for excreting the toxic waste of the body. Same way, the wetlands have been functioning as the kidneys of landscape. They are there and they have served this very important function of and purifying the water also. So the before I think there's some excreting the toxic waste of the same way the wetlands have been functioning as the kidneys of landscape. They are there and they have served this very important function of. There is a voice which is echoing back. My voice is. Please take care of that. Before
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
okay. So understand exactly wetlands. Wetlands, what are they? They, if we understand it in a very simple manner, these are broadly, if we define, these are areas of land which remain flooded with water, either seasonally or permanently. And if we further want to simplify the definition of the, that means it's a kind of ecosystem which arises when there is inundation of water. That means the water, when it floods, when it gets flooded on that land area, it creates a unique ecosystem of soil, because the air spaces which otherwise in the terrestrial soil you'll see that the air spaces, there are soil, the soil is having air spaces, but in the case of wetlands the air spaces are being captured by the water molecule. So there is no oxygen available for the soil. So that soil is called as the hydric soil, and it is a condition which is called as an anaerobic condition is in the soil, and which again is a very important site for some of those bacteria who thrive in these in anaerobic scenarios only. And therefore, with this kind of condition, it enables only those species of, especially if we look at the plants, those species of plants who are tolerant to such flooding condition, and also anoxic condition, which is prevailing in the wetlands. So that's why it's a kind of unique kind of ecosystem. And if you look at the wetlands, there are, these are present all over the world. There are a variety of such wetland types present on the on the earth. We have all of them in every part of country, every continent available. These wetlands. These are even the saltwater condition. These are having freshwater conditions. They are present in inland. Also, they are present in the coastal areas. Also, we also have natural wetlands and also human wetlands, which have been taken into the wetland definition. So if you look at the freshwater wetlands, there are many like marshes, swamps, floodplains, lakes, rivers, pools, peatlands. And if we look at saltwater wetlands, these are estuaries, mudflats, saltwater marshes, mangroves, which you must be having an idea, and lagoons, coral reefs, shellfish reefs, even the human-made wetlands, because we do use rice paddies. That is again a category being included in the wetland, fish ponds, and the reservoirs which get created because of the barrages and the dams. Also, that has also been included under the wetland definition, and salt pans. Uh, Now we all know that the planet of Earth is having more water as compared to the terrestrial land. So there is water everywhere, but only 2.5% of water is fresh water, which is stored in glaciers, snow caps, or underground aquifers. And out of this, only less than 1% of water, because that is not available to the humans as such, we cannot utilize it for our own purpose. Only less than 1% of fresh water is usable, and out of which only 0.3% is in rivers and lakes. So all the fresh water which is available to us is mostly being provided by these wetlands. So that makes another important aspect of these wetlands, which we have to understand, that if they are there, the fresh water, which is the major requirement for the human society, is being fulfilled by these wetlands also. Uh, Further, if we understand there are many types of, as I said, the wetlands, and there has been when initially, if we understand these varieties of wetlands which are present all over the planet, and they have the regional nomenclature also, and therefore we have a number of varieties and the kind of ecosystems available around the planet. These are present all over. Look at the areas near the lakes, near the rivers, or near the coastal areas, you will find them all over. So the categorization, although we have much more different classification systems, if we have to understand it in a better way. But for the simplified version, I will just give you an idea that we have six basic types of wetlands: a swamp, a marsh, a bog, a fen, a wet meadow, and the area which is mostly these littoral or sublittoral shallow water zones. Basically, that is the six basic categories which we have for the wetlands. If you look at this particular diagram, which I am showing here right now, I am showing a lake ecosystem or a water ecosystem on the right hand side, and a terrestrial landscape on the left hand side. So whatever these ecosystems, whatever different types of wetlands we are talking, they are actually present in between these. That means it is basically a transition zone between a terrestrial landscape and an aquatic resources. So whatever is there, it could be, where it would be a lake. Accordingly, the kind of wetland type will be different. If it is an ocean, then it will be different. If it is a river, it will be different. So basic is that marshy or swampy, or the way I have categorized it, there are wet meadows and bogs and fens. We also classify them on the basis of dominant vegetation. Like for example, if you look at the swamp, these are basically the dominant vegetation is a tree species or a woody, hardy species, wood species. So for example, mangroves, they are swamps actually. And if we look at this marsh is having a dominant vegetation which is herbaceous. You just look at down, it's herbaceous vegetation, grasses, tall grasses, which are mostly emergent vegetation. There are and the submerged also. Sometimes we include them also in the marshy area. Then we have wet meadows. Meadows are the prairies, are basically the grasslands where you will find that these areas are those areas which may occasionally be flooded also, so or sometimes they may be dried also. So you'll have those vegetation who are tolerant to that occasional flooding also. So accordingly they may get replaced by the flood tolerant species and the terrestrial species also. And now the one more category which I can explain it here is the shallow or water zone, where it is mostly the littoral zone of lakes or the river bays. These areas which are near to the where the water is, the light is able to enter into the substrate zone. It's not much deeper. So plants mostly will be the truly aquatic plants which will be present in this region, which will be the floating vegetation, rooted floating vegetation. These kinds of truly aquatic plants we'll find in the shallower zones. Then we have two more categories, which is bog and fen. We don't find it in our country much because these are a typical character of a colder region. So you'll see these bogs and fens, which we also call as peatlands. Peatlands are mostly a common feature of the colder regions. So you have these in Russia, Siberia, Europe, Canada, where there is much more colder climatic conditions available. So with this colder climatic condition, what is happening in these areas is that you have organic content which is much more richer, which takes a lot of time by the bacteria to degrade. So there is a lot of organic content, and accordingly the pH is also different. Like in box, you have less than 5 pH, and for the fence you have the it is greater than 6 pH, which is available in the fence. And accordingly in the fence you will have most of the grass species, sedges and grasses, whereas in the box you have mosses like sphagnum and the woody species. So if when we want to understand that what kind of ecosystem or wetland ecosystems are present in our country, so we have mostly swamps, which is mostly the mangrove regions, and the marshes mostly available around the lakes and floodplain areas, and also the littoral zones of lakes and rivers, which may can contain these shallower regions also. So this is the basic understanding what we can find in our country. Uh, the functions which these wetlands can provide, there are numerous functions and values that has been understood over a period of time about the wetlands. Only thing which was initially there understood was that it was a stopover for the migratory birds. But it is not only that stopover being used by a migratory bird for their breeding purpose. It is a area, it's in a unique kind of ecosystem which helps in the flood and erosion control, because they are important sinks on the landscape, which not only absorbs the excess water when there is the flood period, and also helps in not allowing the sediments to enter into the aquatic ecosystem. So flood and erosion control is being managed by these wetland ecosystems. Not only that, recharging of aquifers, which is a very important function being provided by the wetlands, that if they are there, because of their presence, the water which remains within these wetland ecosystems are slowly trickle down, and they are able to recharge the aquifers, the groundwater. And for that, it is enabling the system to remain there, and we don't have the scarcity of water also. And they are also very important providers for the food material, because as I said, it's a transition zone. When I say transition zone, that means it is having a unique kind of ecosystem where not even aquatic species will be present, but there could be terrestrial species and a mix of those species which is tolerant to flooding. So the diversity is more. So the more the diversity, the more food will be available for the fishes, the birds who are coming to these regions. And also the plants available are providing them refuge from the predators, and also allowing them those breeding grounds to be taken care of for these fishes as well as for the birds. So they are providing a unique habitat for the various avifauna, and also sometimes for the fishes also. And we do recreation also in these ecosystems, like passive recreation. If you all have an idea, we go for, bird watching is a very important recreation being done in these areas, and as well as photography. And in active recreation, sometimes hunting is also for the fishes. We do it in these regions. So, uh, and in the important one which we have to reflect on, which we have to understand today, is that they are very instrumental in cleaning the water. If you look at the picture which I was showing earlier, that it's a transition zone between the aquatic and the terrestrial landscape. So, whatever the water from natural areas or from the humans used areas used to come, they used to pass through these wetlands and then go to these aquatic resources, enabling the as much as toxic and the waste to be taken care within these wetland ecosystems, so that whatever the water is entering into river or lake or ocean is in a purified form. So that is what we have captured and what we want to understand in this lecture today. But we all know that there is a huge wetland loss and degradation happening around the world in our country also. And the first and foremost, of course, is that we have always viewed these wetlands as wasteland. So it was an area which was not having, it was not, looking like a lake, also not a riverine ecosystem, also completely, because these are open water bodies. These are somehow marshy, swampy areas where they had been seen as a area which could breed mosquitoes. So they were considered to be the mosquito ground for the mosquito breeding only, and that's why they were even converted into land so that mosquitoes don't breed, because they were causal agent for many of the diseases at that time. So that has also led to the that has been one of the major drivers for the wetland loss and degradation, and many other land use changes which we are seeing around us, like due to the urbanization processes and the agricultural changes, the land use changes, grazing animals or harvesting of timber from forest area has also indirectly impacted, these land use changes have impacted the wetland loss. And also the diversion of water which happens because of dams, dikes or barrages being constructed, or the canalization process which is happening around mostly, is also diverting the water which used to enter directly into these wetlands. That is again because water is a very important component for these wetlands. So when we are diverting water, that again is leading to the loss and degradation of these wetlands. And of course the infrastructure development which we do for the sake of the our own development, whether in the coastal areas or along the river valleys, has already degraded a lot of wetlands. And above all, the air and water pollution which sends a lot of nutrients to these ecosystems has also enhanced these ecosystems to get polluted, and in that degraded ecosystems are more available with us. uh, we look at in India, we have a huge population problem in our country that we all have an idea about it. But with that, we have urbanization also. India is urbanizing at an alarming rate. It's a cause of worry also. And according to the Ministry of Urban Development, the 31% of country has been urbanized till 2011. There is more that by 2031, 50% will be the urbanized. So by 2011, 31% has been urbanized. By 2031, it will be 50%. And with this rapid urbanization, with the rate with which this urbanization is happening, it's not happening in a proper manner. There is no proper planning. Especially the hydrologist view is that whenever we are working for any urbanization process in a country, in our country or in our state for that matter, we have to properly plan. We have to undertake the value of these wetland areas and incorporate them in our planning purpose also. So we have been doing urbanization in a very unplanned manner, and that is already visible. If we recall what the flooding events have happened over last 10 years, we can understand how devastating these floods were, and we were not imagining that that could occur in these metropolitans like Chennai, Mumbai, Srinagar. In many of such events which have occurred have made us realize that we are not properly understanding the use of these wetland ecosystems and how they have been saving us from this. Look at Mumbai. Mumbai's mangrove cover has reduced from 28 to 18%, from 25 to 1925 to 1994, and with the same period, the built-up area of Asti has increased from 12 to 52%. Even in Srinagar, which is a land of many water bodies, there is almost 50% loss of water bodies happening in this area, and from 1911 to 2004. And recently we witnessed two major floods in the state also. Bangalore, they had 262 lakes in 1960. It's already lost so much of lakes. There are only 10 lakes which could be considered as healthy lakes. And the map which I'm showing here is taken from Down to Earth report. And if we could see in this particular map, they have shown in the circle the number of floods, which are major floods that have occurred after 2011. And the half circle, which is here, like in Srinagar, if you see, there are this half circle, which is showing the loss of the water bodies or the water spread in the state. So by this, you can understand how much of loss in every state it has happened. More than 62% in Delhi, more than 50% in Udaipur, more than 46% in Lucknow. And these areas, like in Surat, it's almost 95% of the water spread has decreased. And the population which is projected is also shown in numbers, that there will be more increase in these areas, the population, which may further enhance the which would be the further causal agent for the loss of these wetlands. And if we looked at the important convention, that is Ramsar Convention, you must know that we have many conventions working on different aspects of conservation, whether it is the conservation of biological diversity, whether it's a convention of the climate change or desertification, many such conventions which are catering to the needs of many things in that one particular convention. But this is the only convention which is there for the conservation of wetlands. Just only can let you know how much important this ecosystem is, that is being given so much of importance, that a convention was created to understand the value and functions of these areas and to conserve them also. So this convention on wetlands, which we call as the Ramsar Convention also, it's an intergovernmental treaty which provides the framework for national action and international cooperation for the wise use of wetlands and their resources. We have around 171 contracting parties today who are, having who have ratified, who have signed that they will be working for the conservation of wetlands. And with that, the every all over the world, we have around 2,414 wetlands who have received the international importance, or we are simply call them as the Ramsar sites also, out of which the inland wetlands are around 1,962, and marine and coastal wetlands are around 990, and human-made wetlands are around 846. So this convention has enabled not to only to work upon and to conserve these wetlands. In that process, when we are recognizing a wetland of international importance or a Ramsar site, that not only highlights the that particular region through that wetland, it also encourages the society plus the government organization to work for the conservation of that wetland. And in that process, we learn and we understand, we get educated, we get aware about the various flora and fauna and the biodiversity present in that wetland. So, by signifying a wetland under the Ramsar Convention, enables us to have that multi-dimensional aspect to be covered, with which we conserve, with which we make aware the society, with which we do proper education research to the students as well as to the society. So this is how by highlighting the wetlands in the Ramsar Convention has enabled us to work more for the conservation of these wetlands. If we look at our country, in our country, we have currently 42 sites which have been designated as the wetlands of international importance, which we call as I said, Ramsar site, covering around 10,81,438 hectares of area. And if we look at this particular graph, you'll be seeing that from 2005 onwards till 2019, not much of work was being done. Not only one or two wetlands were able to be taken as the Ramsar site. But in 2019 and 2020, a lot of work has been done. By 2019, we had more than 10 wetlands which were given importance under the wetlands of international importance. And in 2020, we have included recently five wetlands under this Ramsar site. This is a map which I have taken from WII map, which they have submitted to the Ramsar. These are the Ramsar. I hope you are able to see it. And by 2020, we have included Asan Conservation Reserve, which is in Uttarakhand. And then we have added, I think this is Lonar Lake in Maharashtra. We have added Sokar Wetland Complex, which is in Ladakh. Then we have also added very near to us Even the Nawabganj bird sanctuary was recently, which is in Uttar Pradesh in 2019, and then we added Sur Sarovar Lake, also present in Uttar Pradesh, recently in 2020, and the one more Kabartal wetland, which was in Bihar, was given Ramsar site designation in 2020. So India is currently working very much for conservation of these wetland ecosystems, and every year, you know, for which the state government, of course, has to take a lot of initiative to realize the importance and to understand who are those wetlands which need to be prioritized for the conservation sake. So accordingly, a list is being prepared by the country and inputs taken from the states, and then we forward it to the Ramsar, which again takes again, we have so many criteria that they should have the minimum 2000 bird species should be there, or should be certain number which has to be taken care of, that they are important birding site, also they are important stopover migratory route, may stopover sites for these migratory birds also. So over the period of time, since we have signed this important convention, we are working very much for the conservation of these wetlands in our country. And of course, you'll be very happy to know that we have in ministry a proper department looking for the conservation of wetlands. These are some of the beautiful photographs which I have taken from the research papers, from some of the research papers and from the Google also. I think you have used this Loktak Lake Manipur in your poster also. These are important. If you look at the circular shape, it's in these vegetation structures present. These are called as fundis. The fundi is a unique character of Loktak Lake, and this is the unique character. Why? Because this is a unique habitat being used with the Shanghai deer, the dancing deer of Manipur, which is again an endemic species to that area only. And that's why conservation is more important, because the habitat is required by an animal, and without which they will not be able to survive. And that's why we have opened a national park for the sake of Shanghai deer, which is called as the Cable Lamjaw National Park in Manipur. We don't have such unique character anywhere, any lake, especially in our country. Then this is Chilka Lake, where we have an important birding site, which is called as the Nalaban Bird Sanctuary, where you can see a huge variety, huge species of bird present. Kolero Lake, Andhra Pradesh, Renuka Lake, Pokarsar Lake, Pong Dam Lake, Bhuj Wetland, Hular Lake, the Porbil, Sundarbans. Again, a very important historic thing which we did in 2019 was to include Sundarbans as a Ramsar site, because it is a part present in West Bengal and part in Bangladesh. But again, with having that taken that again into the Ramsar site, has again uh, made the countries and the international community to look for the conservation of such important sites, because after tsunami, we realized the importance of mangroves also, how instrumental they were there to save the coastal areas from the impact of the tsunami. Although I know I don't have to talk about the beauty of these wetlands which we have with us, we have to understand how they are instrumental in cleanup. There comes the concept which is called as the constructed wetlands. Now, by word constructed means that we are constructing them on our own, but the concept has been taken from the wetlands. So, this constructed wetland concept is actually where in the natural way how it used to treat the water has been taken as a concept, where we are treating the sewage water, especially, which is used, having a very effective and ecologically sound design and principle. That means we have to understand how to design, what kind of substrate has to be there, what plants we'll be using, microbes at times if we use them also, and how the sunlight should enter, and what should be the different means with which we can send the water to these constructed wetland units, and they can transform these wastewater into some usable water which can be reused for many purposes. So the water treatment which happens in these constructed wetlands uses all the mechanisms, whether it is a biological or a chemical and a physical. All these processes are, or all these mechanisms are used, wherein the even the physical filtration, because as the water is having a lot of solid waste also in it, we have to physically filtrate it also, and a sedimentation process, so that only the wastewater is entered into the constructed wetland unit. And then in constructed wetland unit, there is a biological uptake or transformation of nutrients, which happens by the bacteria. It is because the anaerobic condition, those bacteria also are helpful in transforming the nutrients. and even the aerobic bacteria which are present also help in the transformation of nutrients. And then the plants which we utilize are able to uptake these contaminants within the water, wastewater, through the roots, and the metabolism within the root plant is taking care of these in a way, taking these toxicants to the foliar region where they can get volatilized into the atmosphere, or they are being used by the plants as a within, they are stored within the biomass also. And then chemical processes like precipitation, absorption, and decomposition, which helps, all these processes basically help in the purification and treatment of the wastewater. So why this is a very important kind of concept, because we you all must be having an idea, we do have STPs, sewage treatment plants, which are taking care of this, where we are doing this physical precipitation or filtration and biological transformation by, providing oxygen which is required for improvement of the water also. That is being done by the huge machinery involved in that process, where we have to do primary screening, then primary treatment, secondary treatment, tertiary treatment, which is again a different subject, but that involves a huge cost. So in this constructed wetlands, we don't use any machinery. It is the natural setup, except sometimes maybe we have to use some pumps in order to transfer the water from these settling tanks to the constructed units, or sometimes even to take water from these constructed wetlands to the fields where they are used. And nor are we using any chemicals. It's only through the natural mechanisms that the water is purified and recycled within these constructed wetland units, and which makes it effective in that sense. It is low cost, and no such machinery or chemicals are being used for the purification of water. It is only through the natural mechanisms. So, how the water is being treated? Wastewater, as I said, has to be treated by the septic tank first. So the tank, which is septic tank, which is there, used is actually having two compartments, and they are sized appropriately so that they allow enough time for the solids to settle down, so that they get separated from the wastewater. So they are there. So that's why the compartment has to be accordingly sized, so that it allows the enough time for the water to settle down, so that the solid gets separated from the wastewater. And once they leave the septic tank, the wastewater has to enter into the constructed wetland system. And in the constructed wetland system, we understand that as soon as the pollutants enter these constructed wetland systems, they get removed from the water by the microbes which are living on the surface of the media, which we have again used. What kind of surface media we use? We use gravel, soil, like sand, as a media. Accordingly, what percentage we use? Sometimes there will be more gravel, there will be more soil in that comparison. That ratio we have to understand again when we design what could be the ratio. But that substrate is again a very important media, because the substrate enables the microbes to live on the surface of the media, and also the plant roots where the microbes will be present. So with these microbes, there is that the most of the pollutants which enter into these constructed wetlands get removed from the water. And the plants, why they are required? Because they not only are able to provide oxygen to the bed, but they're also able to remove some of the nutrients through the uptake of the nutrients from the nutrients from the water through the root system. And other such processes like filtering, microbial decomposition, and attachment to the particle surface also helps removal of the pollutants. Also, the water, as long as it remains in the wetland, the more the pollutants will be removed, and the better will be the quality of water which leaves the wetland. When water which is being treated within these constructed wetland, when it leaves, there is a water exit, wastewater exit from the wetland. And then again, that where the wastewater is entering into the wetland, it is being controlled through a water level control sump. This sump actually is required in order to adjust the water level, because we don't have to raise the water level above the media. It has to remain lower than the media surface, because it aesthetically is also very pleasing, and also it does not allow the odors to the odor which is coming from these wastewater to move out of the soil. So to prevent the movement of the odor, or to also to look aesthetically good, the water level has to be kept lower than the media. That means the substrate which is being used for the constructed wetlands. So the sump is therefore required for the, that is one of the water level control where we have to adjust the water levels. And at times when the water has to move out of the constructed wetlands, then we have another soil absorption field where the field is, having soil with the number of plants or the even the microbes which are being utilized in these soil absorption field, which is the last treatment stage. So if it is able to enter into the field through so gravity process, that is okay. But if it is not, then again we may have to use a pump tank from which the water is then pumped to this absorption field where the soil absorbs it, and the microbes and the plants which are growing in the soil will use the remaining nutrients in the water to enable more purified water to move out of the wetland zone. So this is how it looks. It's a typical subsurface constructed wetland. Here you can see that this is the two compartment septic system where the most of the time the settling and filtration of wastewater happens, and then it is passed through through a water sump which maintains the level of water within this constructed wetland system, which is having a mix of substrate and the plants, and as well as some microbes which are naturally occurring there. Also sometimes we may use a microbiome consortia according to the what target waste we are treating. And then from there the soil absorption field is again the water is being sent to this where more of these toxic material of the wastewater is being taken care of and the water gets purified. Now the treatment which is being done for whether there is an industrial or urban wastewater is number of such processes happen within the wetland ecosystem. As I said, the degradation which happens because of the abiotic or biotic, both whether this what kind of substrate is present, that also attaches these toxic material to these particles, substrate particles, and also the biotic means the microbial consortia which is present in the soil will act upon and degrade these molecules and further transform them into the better molecules which is required by the plants or the other important floral or faunal element within these ecosystems. Also, the stabilization through precipitation or sedimentation or phytostabilization, which is done within this, that is another process. And the plants which are able to incorporate these toxic material within their biomass through phytoaccumulation or phytodegradation, and also through the foliage, the evaporation or the phytovolatilization of the volatile material also enhances or helps in the treatment process within these constructed wetlands. So this particular table will let you know how many processes are significant, what and what are those target toxicants being taken care of, like in the phyto extraction where the contaminants are being taken up and they are being transported and translocated above the ground roots, though the heavy metals mostly have been taken care of, and this is the most important part which is being tested also. So heavy metals and radionuclides and other organic compounds have been used. Phytodegradation means that the plant takes up the contaminant, stores, and then biochemically degrades or converts it into some harmless byproduct or some harmful contaminant, which is further being taken care of. So in this again, the target intoxicant, these toxicants have been chlorinated solvents like DDT, atrazines, nitriles, TNT, and chlorine and phosphorus-based pesticides. Then through phytovolatilization, we have the plants which are able to extract the volatile metals and organic compounds from the soil and volatile them through the foliage. Sorry. So selenium, tritium, arsenic, mercury, such target toxicants have been seen that they are being taken care by this process also. And then through the phytostabilization and rhizofiltration, like in rhizofiltration, plant roots, which is grown in aerated water, they're able to precipitate and concentrate these toxic metals, radionuclides or organic chemical and nutrients. And even phytostabilization, where the plants are able to stabilize this pollutant in soil and then render them harmless. And in that process, they control the soil pH and other important redox causing speciation within the wetland soil. And with this, many metals, phenols, and chlorinated solvents have been taken care of. So these all processes have been tested, and we have two important, uh, you know, remediation methods. One is called as the phytoremediation, another is called as the bioremediation. By bioremediation is again where we are referring that we are using either the naturally occurring bacteria or microorganisms for that matter, but sometimes we may deliberately also use those microorganisms which have been tested in the laboratory that they are able to break down certain environmental or some targeted pollutant for that matter in order to clean that site. So that again is a very important process which is being used in treating the industrial effluents also. So in this process, we use microorganisms mainly, but sometimes even plants also, or microbial or plant enzymes also to understand how they are able to detoxify the contaminants in the soil and other environments. So this concept is basically including the biodegradation, where the microbial or the microorganisms are able to uh, partially or sometimes even totally transform or detoxify the contaminants by the microorganisms and as well as the plants. So this bioremediation is why it is so very important, because in this when we are using the microbes for the degradation purpose, these microbial organisms are able to enhance this rate of degradation, natural degradation of these pollutants or contaminants. And sometimes we use only the indigenous microorganisms, so we only take those bacteria which are already present in these contaminants and see how they are working, and then accordingly we use that indigenous microorganisms who are able to work upon these toxic material or contaminants and convert them into some important nutrients or carbon sources through the biostimulation or biorestoration process. Or we also have used, sometimes we can use these enriched culture of microorganisms, which are, as I said, specifically being seen that they are able to target desired contaminant and are very quicker in that they are able to degrade that targeted contaminant in much better way. And that is again a very important research area being taken care in most of the universities and research institutes. Auto-remediation, which you all have will now understood that this is the most important concept of the contaminated environments, to clean up the contaminated environments. And this is what we use mostly in the wetland ecosystems. But sometimes we may also introduce or use the natural microorganisms along with these plants. So we are actually having both phytoremediation and bioremediation processes in the wetlands. So plants which again are used are being, there are a number of such research papers which may be available. We have used phragmites, we have used water hyacinth, we have used many of the duckweed species, we have used the arundinodonax species, we have used typha also. These emergent and sometimes even the floating vegetation to take care of the contaminants. So how does the plant do that? They clean these many type of contaminants, like especially the heavy metals and the pesticides and all. They have been working very best, but at a very low concentration. They are able to, these only plants when the contaminant levels are very low, they work very best at that time, because sometimes if the concentration of pollutant is more, they may not allow the plant to grow. So they may limit the plant growth, and or they may take a longer period time to clean up. Also, when the plants are being planted in these constructed wetland ecosystems, they also enable a very rich microbial community to grow not only in the sediment but also in the root zone of the plants, which again helps in the biochemical transformation of the pollutants. Till now, the constructed wetland system has been very efficiently treating the household, which we say grey water or black water, and also the biodegradable industrial waste and municipal waste. We have yet not achieved that kind of success in the treatment of the industrial waste, which is not biodegradable. For that, we are still working on the bioremediation processes and trying to set up the research in that area where we'll be able to have more membrane to be taken care of, what kind of membrane systems which could hold more of the toxicants and that can be utilized in many other ways. But the phytoremediation process has been very successfully tested in the treatment of the household water and the biodegradable municipal as well as the industrial wastewater. So these constructed wetlands have been used as a very important treatment step for decentralized wastewater treatment systems. And even where we use these sewage treatment plants, in that also the tertiary system is the constructed wetland, where the activated sludge, after an activated sludge plant or trickling plant, filter plant. So in order to increase the effluent quality of the the waste which is being taken care in these STPs or the wastewater treatment systems. This is There are now the different wetland types of constructed wetland types also. We have free water surface flow, we have horizontal subsurface flow, and vertical subsurface flow. If you look at this diagram, please look clearly. If you look at this free water surface flow, the water is moving on the surface. That is, it's a generic kind of more common kind of the wetland ecosystems being used all over the world. And I must tell you, Germany was the first country in 1950s who initiated this constructed wetland design and to use them for the treatment of wastewater. And later on, we all followed. And the second one, which is horizontal subsurface, that means the water is being and it enters into the system, into the constructed wetland system from the surface, subsurface. But the water which is moving out of the wetland system is very down. You can see the outlet is very low at the base of the constructed wetland system. Whereas in the vertical subsurface flow, if you look at the water being which is entering into the wetland ecosystem is made to enter into the system or into the soil system through a vertical flow. So this is much more less cost effective, more not much of the work has to be done here. We may have to make the entry of water in that way so that the pipes have to be connected and the water has to be pushed through this and it has to move out of this outlet only. Whereas in this there is a designing complexity that we have to allow the water to enter into the soil surface in a vertical form. So, surface flow wetlands are mostly exposed surface water. They look aesthetically pleasing and they also provide native and migratory wildlife. That's why it's more being used. And also they allow the natural decay because they are exposed to the air as well as the sunlight. And also because of that, which creates a kind of complex biological and chemical reaction and enables the treatment of the wastewater, but they look like pond, and that's why it's become unpopular in mostly urban areas because, as I said, they allow the breeding of mosquitoes. So horizontal subsurface and vertical subsurface is also being used. Again, they are more efficient, but their cost is more significantly more than the surface flow wetlands. We don't have to do much in the surface flow wetland, but when we are creating horizontal subsurface and vertical subsurface flow, we have to design it in that way so that the wetland, there is no exposure of water and vegetation is on the top, and it should prevent the mosquito breeding. And as I said, the water has to move horizontally and therefore has to have an inlet and outlet pipe. And it is being treated by microorganism as well as the plants. And mostly the microorganism have been doing the most of the work in the horizontal subsurface flow, but they need plants for their survival because they are the one who are enabling the system to, bed to have an oxygen in the system. Then in vertical subsurface flow, it is much more complex, as I said, because the water has to flow downward from the planted layers. So that substrate has to be created in that way so that water is vertically moving down. And of course, the horizontal subsurface takes more land area, whereas the vertical subsurface takes less land. But it is a technical challenge to build and maintain such vertical subsurface flow. And mostly these wetland requires the vertical wetland systems require the air pumps to get air to the bottom because they are very deep in that. So we have been able to design over the period different kind of wetland constructed wetland types, and we're utilizing them for the treatment of wastewater and wherever the possibility of land is there and that can be treated. And that has been initiated in our country also. There are many disadvantages and advantages. Advantages that as compared to the sewage treatment plants, they are very low operating costs, is not much involved. We have to use very common material like sand, gravel, and soil, and no such artificial or machinery is involved. Only natural processes are being there, which are taking care of the purification. No order problems. There is no energy consumption, even less or no energy consumption, except if we are using pumps. And minimal environmental impact is happening or on the landscape. And disadvantage is that yes, you need to occupy that area, and there is certain times pre-treatment required, and these systems require frequent maintenance. And when they are started, it takes a long time for them to actually initiate that treatment. It is not that as soon as we create, they are able to do, because in order to work upon the contaminants, it has to create a wetland condition. So until and unless there is the hydric soil created in the wetland ecosystem, then only the microbial the organisms or microbial organisms are able to work or act upon the contaminants. And they are very carefully to be laid down so as to make ensure that there is no leaching to the groundwater also. So what kind of substrate has to be used has to be properly thought of. And it's not suitable for the cold climatic conditions because it takes a lot of time for the uh, media or the startup to happen in these cold climatic regions. I'm taking an example of East Kolkata wetland. You all must be knowing this is a very huge network of man made wetlands, which is bordered by green embankments and channels. This is maintained by the farmers and the fisher folks who are using the city's sewage and utilizing them in these unique wetlands by purifying them in the unique wetlands, and then they are organically treated and through the sunshine, oxygen, and microbial action, and then they are used as a productive fish habitats. So though this process, we have some bioremediation process. In that process, the water from the city is being cleaned up also, and that takes around only less than 20 days to clean the city's wastewater. And this purified nutrient rich water is then channeled into ponds, which they call locally as berries, where the algae and fresh fish thrive in these. So, in short, we can say these wetlands are having Kolkata's, they are in a way sewage remediation. They don't need STP. They are using these wetlands as a free sewage remediation problems to work upon the wastewater. And in that process, they have aquatic gardens, and also the fisheries are being used in these areas. Uh, so they are supporting the farmers as well as the fishermen, and also they are providing a natural flood defense to this low-lying city. This is you know the Drobajyoti Ghosh was an engineer who turned environmentalist who has been leading to save this East Kolkata wetlands because of the symbiotic association of treating the sewage of the city and also providing livelihood options to the fishermen and the farmers also. So his efforts paid, and the East Kolkata wetland was also recognized as a Ramsar site, that means a wetland of international importance, in 2002. This wetland is able to produce around 10,000 tons of fish every year, and around 40 to 50% of green vegetables which are available in the city market is being taken care by the East Kolkata wetlands. This is how it works. The urban wastewater. This is a diagrammatic representation that urban wastewater is being supplied by the municipal corporation, which is routed through these series of small inlets, and these are managed by the fishery cooperative. The cooperatives control the inflow of this wastewater, which allows them to let it settle so that only the top tier water enters into the shallow wetland. And there is a kind of gate being used which is separating the waste water uh, and the wetland water, and also it does that kind of structure enables that the fish does not come to the area where the wastewater is, so that because it is an oxygen less area the fish can die. So these parabolic structures have been created to separate the wastewater from the wetland water. And in the meantime, the water which enters into the lake in these wetland areas, the nature, their natural properties within these wetlands, they work upon these organic waste. It settles down and it gets decomposed by the microbial action, and number of the biological steps which is being taken care to treat this organic waste in the wetland, which is again converted into fish feed because fishes need that organic waste. And many such ecological processes are there at working, like soil bacteria, macroalgae, plants bacteria, and plants enzyme themselves are there to convert these toxicant into some useful products. So they utilize these nitrate, absorb phosphate, and take care of the heavy metals, and in that process it gets settled down to the sediments, and there is less turbid water which through the sunlight which accelerates into these wetland areas are accelerates this process also. And the water which leaves in these where the areas they are processed where the vegetables as well as the fisheries are being taken care of. So this could be utilized in every where, but again, as I said, we need only the domestic sewage or municipal sewage with which it can very efficiently work upon. Now, since we are living in Delhi, we should know about our state also. The Delhi has witnessed a huge anthropogenic stress because of the population, which is because the huge job opportunities, everybody wants to settle in Delhi, and also the floating population, which comes from different nearby regions, also has put a lot of stress. And many such activities like the waste dumping, solid waste dumping, silting, sludge decomposition, deposition, encroachment of land, which is a huge problem in our state right now, whether it is for agricultural practices or creating huge high-rise buildings. Excessive wheat growth has constantly contributed for the degradation of these water bodies. We have, according to the National Wetland Atlas 2009, around 441 wetlands were mapped in the state, in which even 13 wetlands, which were less than zero point 0.5 hectares, were identified. So total area was around estimated to be 2,556 hectares, which is around 0.86% of the geographic area of the state. But in the recent study done in 2011 by Khandekar, he said that study has said that around 629 water bodies which were identified in NCT of Delhi, National Capital Territory of Delhi, 232 are no more available. They cannot be revived because that is the huge the encroachments that have been either these are no more available or they are so much degraded that they cannot be revived. These are some of the water bodies which you can still witness, like Nani Lake, Hoskas Lake was very in bad shape, but because of the intact, was revived again with the constructed wetland system and the aeration process, which they did because again this Hoskas Lake is surrounded by the human settlements around the human colonies, houses are around it, and the treatment of waste was done by passing these untreated water through a series of constructed wetland systems which purified the water. And now this lake has been revived. Mayapuri Lake, I think, is no more available, and it was totally encroached, choked, and you can see the surroundings, and people started using this site as dumping solid waste also. Fort Lake, which is around the Purana Kila area, is again a very important, which needs revival also. Neela Horse is under the process of revival. Asola Bhatti Lake has been revived because of the mining activity, which has been stopped, and the revival of this area was done. And the lakes have again rejuvenated, and they are having a very good flora and fauna present in these areas. Huge biodiversity is available. You should go and visit these areas, but still, despite of the fact that we are working within our Delhi state for the threats are still there. Mostly, as I said, the urbanization is the major problem which we still are facing a problem because we have a number of the domestic and all the industries are no more present within the, but wherever they are, they are indirectly also through the catchments interrupting these water bodies also. Most important is the land hunger and real estate, where we want to have every land available within the state to be converted into some high rise building. And many of such areas where they had been a very important site of wetlands have been grabbed by these real estate people. So this is the major problem which we are facing in our state. And also most of the rivers which used to be connected with these water bodies have been disconnected. You must be knowing the Bhalswa Lake, which is very near to the North Campus. It's an oxbow lake. Oxbow lake is that it means it was a connect. It was actually the river used to pass through the Balswa lake. That was its original course. But over the period, because of the sedimentation, which is a natural process of a river, it meanders, it moves out. And within Delhi, we have River Yamuna, which is moving eastwards. So ideally, the entire East Delhi is a floodplain area of the River Yamuna. So this because of this meandering process or the course of a change in the course of river, these oxbow lakes are a typical or a common feature of a riverine ecosystem. And the Balswa Lake is an oxbow lake. That means it was connected with the river Yamuna. But now if you see this lake, it's again disconnected. So it will be with due course of time that we will not see this lake after the kind of the urbanization and the kind of disruption in this lake is happening. We may not see it in the future also, although we know that succession is a very normal process, but because of our action it will happen so very fast. So many of these water bodies which were connected with the rivers are disconnected, and the way we are handling our urban system, where we want to preserve our city and not have any kind of damage because of flood, so we have created huge embankments along the riverine ecosystems, which again is disconnecting these water bodies. Also, the siltation which is happening in these water bodies is also increasing the eutrophication within the, which is again the nutrient enrichment, which makes the these water bodies unfit because they are not able to work or act upon these high nutrient waste available in the water bodies. And also the kind of solid waste which we dispose of into these water bodies, especially when we were using even the fly ash disposal in some major water bodies, or the kind of religious offerings we offer to these riverine ecosystems or the most important water bodies have also, this is again a very important threat to these water bodies, especially the village ponds, which when the more of the population increases even in the villages, these areas become a kind of the areas where these wastewater are being accumulated. So the villagers are more keen to fill it up rather than thinking about conservation. So with this process, even the government machinery has reclaimed these ponds for the social infrastructure by creating schools or dispensaries on these sites because they are no one's land also. So even the ritual bathing is the threat to the water bodies within Delhi. But yes, the good sign is that the government is very keen to work for the treatment of these wastewater, especially because we are very concerned about the Yamuna River. So we all know that despite of having so many STPs being constructed along the Yamuna to treat the waste and let it enter into the Yamuna in a much more purified manner, has not been very successful. We have even many unauthorized colonies through which these wastewater enters into the Yamuna directly and pollutes it more. The government has initiated that they will construct 11 constructed wetlands, which will come near the Kalindi Kunj, which is near the Okla Barrage, but on the western side and on the floodplain, and it will they be there started by 2021, mid of 2021, which will be able to treat around 15 to 20 a million liter sewage of water per day, wastewater, and it has been created by using boulders and plants. And they will be really, again a testing ground for to understand to have a system which could be an alternative to the conventional sewage treatment plants in Delhi, which mostly remains underutilized or they are not able to treat the wastewater properly. And with which this kind of system, it effectively comes by 2021, we'll get to know uh, how much these constructed wetlands are able to treat the wastewater, and how much the Yamuna gets purified. The rest of them are also in the pipeline that they will be functional by 2021 also, that will be treating the unauthorized sewage coming from unauthorized colonies like Nagar, Khizrabad, Zakir Nagar, Batla House, which goes into the Yamuna directly. And many of even Delhi government is very keen, and they are working even in the villages also. They're trying to work on the sewage or the wastewater which is coming from the villages and treat those small canals by having these operational constructed wetlands, which will further lessen the burden of the pollutant water to enter into the Yamuna. So with this, they are also targeting not only the small canals or small drains, they are also targeting the major drains like Najafgarh drain or the Baropula drain or the Shahadra drain, so that as the how many these drains which are entering into the river, these canals will be first treated with the smaller constructed wetlands, which will further lessen the burden into the major drains, and eventually whatever the water will be in the major drains will be much more purified, which will be again taken care near the Yamuna river, so that whatever water enters, it's not the wastewater, but the purified water which enters into the Yamuna. Uh, with this, I would like to complete my talk by saying that these are very beautiful ecosystems. Not only in that sense, they are providing the huge biodiversity support with regard to plant or animals, and these are also aesthetically so very beautiful that by visiting these areas, you not only feel so very happy to see these areas, but with that, that we should understand they are not only having a huge functional value by which they are enabling us to, if you understand, if these ecosystems were not there, there would have been more devastation, there would have been more problems in in these landscapes. It's because of these sinking grounds, which are not sinks for the excess water, but with that sink, they are also source for the water, which in the lean period they are providing water through the aquifer recharging, which is most important function which we totally forget. When the Yamuna floodplains, the most important function which the Yamuna floodplain plays is that they are able to recharge the aquifers. If you do convert these areas again, there will be no recharging of aquifers, because with the urbanization pattern we are having more of concrete structures. We have no land available where the water will percolate into the groundwater and recharge these aquifers. So we need to understand not only they are able we can use this concept for treating the wastewater, but as such these ecosystems need to be there, need to remain intact. So we need to work more closely and to create awareness and educate society and people around us that we need to save these are not wastelands, these are not breeding grounds for mosquitoes. These are areas which are basically enabling the function. Many villagers have come forward in the Najafgarh area, and they are very keen to work with us in our university. That we would like to work and with you so that we can revive these small ponds in our village also. And 2nd February is the day every year we celebrate as World Wetland Day. And I would request the organizing committee as well as the students to celebrate this day and celebrate this ecosystem on that very day. Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my presentation. If there is any question, I would be grateful to answer.
Thank you, Pamposh. Thank you for your informative webinar. We are very thankful to you. May I have one or two questions from the audience? Please be there.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, how can we as a student work for the conservation of wetlands?
See, as a college student, maybe you may be of different background, but if you have understood a little bit, you'll at least make people aware around you that these are very important ecosystems, how they are important and instrumental in recharging of aquifers, how important they are for the avifauna and the fisheries. If you look at our Delhi state, if we want to work within our region around us, whatever is left has to be preserved. So first you should know how many wetlands we have in our state and in which shape or in which state they are. Then only you will be able to make awareness around you. Uh, if will with my experience, I know there are many daylights who don't even have an idea how many wetlands we have in our state. They don't even, most of them don't have even seen it. They don't say River Yamuna, we don't know where it is. So first is that you should understand how many such ecosystems are available around us and visit those areas. Come anytime, we will be very grateful to take you to the visit towards Najafgarh Lake, which is a very degrading lake right now, but we are constantly making awareness, creating awareness around the villagers. So whenever you visit any village, any pond, don't say, oh, ये तो बहुत गंदा तालाब है. Yes, it's very dirty. Just make them understand it is doing all these functions. So if you make such awareness campaigns, that will be a good initiative from a student perspective, that you are at least educating, you are making aware the society around you that these are important ecosystems. I hope I am able to answer to you.
Okay, ma'am. I too have one or two questions, but during your presentation, I am able to get okay, what is the status of wetland in Delhi and how government is doing to actually regenerate them. So
It's
that's
not.
idea I got. Anyone else want to have a question? Actually, ma'am, most of the students are online, so they have
Yeah,
some question which I will mail to you definitely in the
sure.
future.
I'll be
So
glad to
that's
answer.
definitely, ma'am. So if no one is going to ask any question, I would like to thank Pamposh ma'am for sparing us the time, even though she is not well, but she has spared time for us. That is
Thanks.
very keen of you, very thankful to you. At the end, I would like to thank my principal ma'am, Dr. Sadhna Sharma ma'am, for allowing us to have this webinar. We have with us Anita ma'am, who is the co-convener of the committee. Ma'am, if you would like to ask anything for
Yes, please.
uh,
Yes. You're mute. unmute
मैम
yourself.
मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, प्लीज अनम्यूट कर
Yeah,
दीजिए।
unmute.
जी मैम, जी
You
मैम।
spoke in a very well mannered way.
Thank you so much.
आपने बहुत बहुत अच्छा बोला मैम, बहुत अच्छा। हमें
Thank you.
हर किसी को ये जानना चाहिए कि हमारे पास कौन कौन सी लेक्स हैं, क्या है, कौन कौन सी, मतलब किस तरह हम उनको प्रोटेक्ट कर सकते हैं, कैसे कंजर्व कर, बहुत सारा, मतलब इट मीन्स कि आपका लेक्चर बहुत बहुत ज्यादा अच्छा था।
थैंक यू। इफ आई एम एबल टू, अगर मेरी वजह से 4 लोग भी थोड़ा सोचेंगे तो आई थिंक दैट्स
बिल्कुल,
मोर देन अचीव्ड, यू नो, दैट
हाँ
इज।
हाँ जी मैम,
थैंक
हाँ
यू
जी
सो
मैम,
मच।
ओके वेलकम, थैंक यू।
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. That's what I'm saying. Ki we also, whenever we used to teach EVS, we have in mind ki at least if and only 4 students will get the idea how to save the environment, how to conserve the environment. I think the goal will be satisfied. So that is the reason we used to organize a large number of webinars which is related to the environment, so that at least student can get aware of that. So at the end, I would like to thank everyone for that. My EVS department who is there all throughout this webinar. I would like to thank convener, our convener, Dr. Kamlesh ma'am, Dr. Ms. Anita ma'am, the co-convener of the committee. I would like to thank all of them. And at the most, I would like to thank Dr. Pamposh for accepting our invitation in such a short note of time. And even though you are not well, you accept
Thank you.
that, and you presented
Thank you
it very
so
well.
much, Sonal, for, you know, always, you know, helping me in a way, you know,
Sure, ma'am.
always
Sure, ma'am.
troubling you, but you have been always helping me a lot, and we
Sure,
know
ma'am.
it's very important, and for students, I'm always ready. But unfortunately, as I told you, Sonal, I was not well yesterday, but thankfully, could, you know, gather myself today to give this presentation, which was very much
No, no,
important.
ma'am. Definitely, we
Thank you,
also
Sonal.
need such environmentalists who should come forward to
Sure,
save
sure.
whatever wealth we have. It's
Definitely,
very much
definitely.
required. A necessity of the time is there that we should come forward to save all the natural things that
Natural
we have,
resources.
natural resources that we have.
Yes.
At least for living in Delhi, we can at least save them.
Ah, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much,
Thank
Pamposh.
you. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Anita ma'am, for joining us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, well.